Hello, you're watching Israel Update. I'm Gadi Taub in Tel Aviv, and with me is Mike Doran at the Hudson Institute in Washington. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Hi, Gadi. I'm good.
If you're watching this show for the first time, then we have a news bulletin for you to give you the latest on the news. Then we give you the latest update on the war, and then we discuss in depth some of the important topics. This time, the assassination of Said Raza Moussaoui from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard in Syria. Then we promised this. We have this amazing clip translated for us of Ehud Barak and his eternal machinations against Netanyahu. This is getting weirder by the minute, and we'll just show you because describing it is not good enough. And then we have at the end the dumbest take on the news, Mike's choice and my choice. But first, let's watch Iris Chaim. And a word of explanation is in order. Iris is the mother of Yotam Chaim. Yotam is one of the hostages who escaped and was tragically shot by the IDF. A lot has been said about it on the news. There are a lot of accusations from one side to another. It was also used, Mike, you told me it would be used in this way, and I found it later on the web. It was used by Israel's detractors to say that the IDF just shoots at any civilians, even those who surrendered. But this take is, I think, something you may not have heard if you're not in Israel. This is the mother of this guy, this deceased guy, speaking to the soldiers of the IDF from the unit that shot her son. Here she is.
שלום לחטיבה 7828 ביסלח, גדוד 17, מדברת איריס חיים. אני אימא של יותם. אני רציתי להגיד לכם שאני מאוד אוהבת אתכם, ושאני מחבקת אתכם פה מרחוק, ואני יודעת שכל מה שקרה זה בכלל לא באשמתכם, ובאשמת אף אחד חוץ מהחמאס, יימח שמם וזכרם על פני האדמה. אני מבקשת לשמור על עצמכם, ולחשוב כל הזמן שאתם עושים את הדבר הכי טוב בעולם, שיכול לקרות, שיכול לעזור לנו, וכעם ישראל, וכולנו זקוקים לכם בריאים, ואל תהססו לרגע אחד. אם אתם רואים מחבל, אל תחשבו שאתם הרגתם חטוף בכוונה, אתם צריכים להגן על עצמכם, כי רק ככה אתם תוכלו לשמור עלינו. ובהזדמנות הראשונה אתם מוזמנים לבוא אלינו, כל מי שמעוניין, ואנחנו רוצים לראות אתכם בעיניים שלנו, ולחבק אתכם ולהגיד לכם שעשיתם כמה שזה כואב להגיד דבר כזה, ועצוב. זה היה הדבר הכי נכון כנראה באותו רגע. אף אחד מאיתנו לא שופט אתכם ולא כועס, לא אני ולא בעלי רביב, לא הבת שלי נויה ולא יותם בזיכרונו לברכה, ולא תובל, אח שלי יותם. אוהבים אתכם מאוד מאוד, וזה הכל.
Wow, Gadi, what a strong woman. What a very strong woman. And
this also, I think it conveys something of a new spirit in Israel. Our leaders, our politicians, since Rabin till now, came to believe that we need compromise because Israelis will no longer fight. And you see a completely new spirit, what our friend Ran Baratz called the revived spirit of 1948.
They want victory.
Yeah.
But I think that she might, aside from all of that, I don't disagree with it, but it's a lovely thing she did for those soldiers who I think must just be feeling terribly guilty.
You know, and there is also on the margins of this things on social media, apparently some soldiers who carry the trauma of Dutz, Yeri Dutz Dadi, of shooting friendly fire.
Yeah.
And one soldier said, "Thank you, Iris, for saying this. For years, I've been silent about my experience here, and you just released me from my predicament. And for the first time, I'm stepping out of my home." That soldier wrote. That's
wow.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Wow. Gadi, and now the news bulletin. Yesterday, IDF troops reportedly expanded their operation into 4 refugee camps in central Gaza Strip. We'll show you those on the map in just a minute. The initial IDF thrust into that area began in Al Burej camp, where there are an estimated 1,000 Hamas terrorists. The IDF has overwhelmingly completed its operation in Shuja'iyah That's in the north, just east of Gaza City, where the military officials believe that more than 900 Palestinian fighters were killed. The foreign ministry has given Cyprus and the UK its approval, that's the Israeli foreign ministry, of course, in principle to establish a maritime humanitarian corridor for conveying supplies and equipment to the Gaza Strip in the future. Greece and Cyprus initiated this proposal for a maritime corridor at the start of the war, after Israel had announced that it would no longer be responsible for the lives of civilians in the Gaza Strip. According to several reports in major Israeli newspapers, Prime Minister Netanyahu has refused requests from the top Israeli security brass to schedule meetings to discuss Israel's plans for the day after Hamas is dislodged from the Gaza Strip. They quote an unnamed security official as saying, quote, "Time is running out and decisions need to be made already about how to act with regard to all of the relevant actors inside and outside the Gaza Strip. The Americans want explanations," unquote. Gadi and I will talk to you more about that report in a minute. On Monday, Iran accused Israel of carrying out a precision strike that killed the high-ranking Quds Force officer in Syria, General Razi Mousavi. Iran not only quickly reported the fact of the assassination and threatened Israel by saying it not only quickly reported the fact, but it also threatened Israel by saying that, quote, "the barbaric Zionist regime will pay largely for the crime." Yesterday, an attempted terror attack was carried out outside the Israeli embassy in the Indian capital of New Delhi, presumably to make good on the threat that the Iranians made. Razi Mousavi was the director of the Quds Force's aid office in Damascus. He was responsible for moving and transporting advanced arms from Iran to Damascus, where they would then be used by militias in Syria or by Hezbollah in Lebanon. Back over to you, Gadi.
Yeah, this will be our main topic of discussion, the multifaceted issue of this takedown of Mousawi. But before that, Mike, how about we look at the map and get an update that you started to mention on the bulletin? And this is what it looks on the ground right now.
Right. So
Yeah.
the fighting has stopped in Shujaiya. That's just east of where it says Gaza City there in the north. That's that took the Israelis a lot longer to take than I expected. I thought they were going to do it in a matter of a week, but I think it took a few weeks. So the fighting in the north now, I think the IDF is saying that the north is completely under IDF control, nearly completely, and now they've moved southward to the central Gaza Strip, to the refugee camps. That's the area that's outlined in red, in red there. What remains to be seen is what they're going to do in the future. They can't completely destroy Hamas as a military and a political organization if they don't take Han Yunis in the south. They have a position there, but they have not taken over the whole city. That's presumably where Yahya Sinwar is. But also, there's a looming question about Rafah in the south. And now, when the Israelis controlled the Gaza Strip up until 2005, they controlled the road that goes from the Mediterranean along the Egyptian border all the way to Israel. Underneath that road, Hamas has built tunnels into Egypt. You see, Rafah is a city that straddles the border. When the Egyptians controlled Gaza from 1948 all the way up to 1967, and Rafah expanded across the border. So you have the Israeli-Egyptian peace agreement, the Camp David Accords. They created a border that actually split Palestinian families, but there are lots of tunnels that go from one side of Rafah to the other.
And when Ariel Sharon conducted the evacuation of Gaza, what was called a disengagement, he made a point out of not controlling this border with Egypt, referred to in Israel as Tzir Philadelphia, the Philadelphia route, because he said this would dispel any accusations that Israel put a siege on Gaza, because it would have a border with Egypt.
Yeah, it didn't completely dispel those accusations, but it probably did do something in that direction. Apparently in the news, they're saying now the Egyptians do not want the Israelis to go take the Philadelphia road, but it's hard to see how the Israelis can achieve their stated aims for the war if they don't do this. If they don't control the goods coming in and out of Gaza, how do they topple Hamas?
And how they prevent weapons and war material from being passed under the border or through the border? I'm not sure we know how we would control them if there is a maritime route through Cyprus, but that is to be discussed.
Well, the Israelis on that, the Israelis will be on the other end of that, and so nothing will come in that they're not inspecting.
Yeah, but it's
theoretically,
but yeah, but there's it's not an ocean, it's the Mediterranean Sea. But there's a lot that we can't control on land, and probably even more so at sea. This may prove difficult. So we have Saeed Raza Moussaoui now, who was assassinated. No one took responsibility. The assumption in the news is that this was Israel's doing, according to an interpretation of the U.S. policy that we have been hammering in this show. It's not very likely that the United States was responsible for this takedown, and this has multiple meanings in the greater context of the conflict, because as both Mike and I have been saying, I guess in different ways and in different outlets and here too, the United States, as this conflict began, one of the first tasks that the Biden administration took upon itself was to isolate this conflict as an Israeli-Palestinian matter in order to remove it from the context of Iranian proxies, because the United States has been conducting a policy of appeasement towards Iran. And if this war spreads into a regional war, then the whole policy, which Mike and Tony Badran christened the realignment, the policy of appeasement towards Iran, will just collapse in an election year. So the first move that the Biden administration did was to bring an aircraft carrier to the Eastern Mediterranean, the Gerald Ford, and Israelis were overjoyed because they thought that the United States had come to defend us and to deter Hezbollah, but it turned out they also wanted to deter Israel and forbade it to strike and with full force and a preemptive strike against Hezbollah. So Israel, yes, yeah.
So just on that point, that's been the Israeli press has made that clear about the American restraints for a long time, well over a month. But it was only reported, Gadi, in the United States authoritatively last weekend in the Wall Street Journal. So there were lots of news reports then or lots of discussion in the news over the weekend, just before Christmas, about how the Americans had forced the Israelis not to attack Hezbollah.
Yeah, there were so many memes here with Joe Biden and his finger saying don't. And the Israeli press also notified us, although at a whisper, because it's not very sharp at criticizing the United States when it needs to point out the less friendly aspects of the policy. But it was nevertheless, Mike stated clearly in the press that we were discouraged from striking at Iran. So Israel is operating under serious restraint. And if indeed this was an Israeli strike, then Mike, what does that mean vis-a-vis our American ally?
Well, let me read you a quote from Defense Minister Gallant. He was addressing the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee yesterday, and he said the following. It's very interesting. We are in a multiple theater war. We are being attacked from 7 different sectors: Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Judea and Samaria, Iraq, Iran, and Yemen. We have responded and operated already in 6 of those sectors. And I'm saying here in the most explicit way possible, anyone who operates against us is a potential target. Nobody has immunity. It's a very interesting statement because what's the sector in which they haven't operated? I believe it's Iran itself, but that means they have operated in Yemen. And there was that mysterious attack on a missile site in a missile storage site in Sana'a, which was attributed. People speculated that it was the Israelis, but the Israelis didn't take any. They didn't take any credit for it. This is a negotiation that's going on. The assassination of Mousavi. This is clearly it's a negotiation between the Israelis and the Iranians, but it's also a negotiation between Israel and the United States because of the fact that the United States has restricted Israel in terms of attacking Hezbollah. That means that America is kind of a wall behind which Hezbollah can shelter and jump up and shoot at the Israelis, and the Israelis have to be careful about how strongly they respond because they don't want to anger the Americans. So what you see, the dilemma the Israelis are in is that they have to deter Iran and Hezbollah by using superior firepower and showing Hezbollah and Iran that the United States cannot stop Israel if Hezbollah and Iran cross certain red lines, but they can't go too far. So there's always this kind of testing going on. It's testing of Iran and Hezbollah, but it's also testing of the United States. And so by going after an Iranian general in Syria, but a guy who's very much involved in the war, they raise the stakes a little bit here.
And they also put Iran in a dilemma of its own, because this is clearly a strike at Iran. Iran now has to respond. You know, some Israeli commentators are saying to the Israeli public, this is not in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is the first Israel-Iranian war. And the fact that America is trying to deny it is not going to stop us from pursuing it. So what response can we expect from Iran?
Well, as I said in the news, there was this terrorist attack in New Delhi, and I assume that is part of the way that they're going to respond. My guess is what they're going to do is more of the same, but perhaps at a higher intensity. The attacks from the Houthis, attacks on international shipping by the Houthis, but also they could have precision-guided weaponry used by Hezbollah. They haven't used precision-guided weaponry yet, but they could use it inside that 5-kilometer radius, that 5-kilometer envelope along the border, 5 to 7 kilometers. Hezbollah in general has been very careful not to go beyond that for fear of escalation, but they haven't used precision-guided weaponry. This is the kind of military signaling that goes on between the two sides.
Is this in danger of spiraling out into a full-fledged regional conflict?
Absolutely. I mean, it's in danger of spiraling, or whatever the right word is, escalating to an all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah. I think that both sides will probably be careful to contain it, but each one is signaling to the other that they're willing to take risks here in order to deter the other side. So you can never be certain about this, and we need to remember that the 2006 war, the Second Lebanon War, broke out. It wasn't a war that anyone wanted. It just happened because of this. Because each side tested, because the Hezbollah tested the Israelis, and the Israelis reacted very strongly.
And lastly, on this topic, Mike, what can we expect from the Biden administration as a response to an assassination that no one takes responsibility for? But I'm guessing the Biden administration figured or believes that Israel.
Yeah, they assume it was the Israelis. They probably have very good intelligence about it, and who knows, the Israelis may have owned up to it as well, to the Biden administration. I doubt the Israelis ran it by the Biden administration ahead of time. I would be willing to bet a lot of money that they didn't. I don't have any information, but I think,
or a lot of money to bet.
Or That's that is also true. That's truer than I care to even admit. But yes, I'm not a betting man, not because I'm not inclined to bet, but because I don't have the means to do it.
So what would be the
But
response of the Biden administration? They must be furious because that's the heart of their policy now, to prevent this from escalating to a war with Iran.
They will de-escalate. They will de-escalate, and they will start putting pressure on the. They'll start putting pressure on the Israelis with regard to Gaza, which is, I mean, they're already doing that. We see it.
Yeah.
They're pushing the Israelis to slow down. Let's have lower intensity fighting. Give me your answer for the day after, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay. So now we've been promising to show you this, and I've edited a small clip with it's not easy to watch because there's Hebrew subtitles with karaoke lightning of words. But we juxtaposed English subtitles on it. And Mike, this is how would you introduce this? It seems too surreal to be true on the face of it.
This is a window onto the mind of Ehud Barak, who sees himself as the kind of genius strategist of the anti-Netanyahu movement, and it really is remarkable. I want to say the arrogance, the narcissism, whatever, but it's almost like a cartoon character. But this guy's having a real impact.
I said it was a combination or a cross between biblical prophecy and an acid dance nature party. It's like a complete dream. So just to put it in context, Ehud Barak in both cases is speaking to a group called 555. This sounds very mysterious. These are a group of some 300 air crew people who were very much involved in the protest against the reform, which was I don't know how, the third, fifth excuse for Ehud Barak to declare a dictatorship is imminent and to help crystallize a protest movement. And in one of those debates,
sorry, just a little bit of context. Make sure that everybody's with us on this.
Sure.
The air crews, the pilots, they are, of course, they are the most revered element in the IDF, the most elite element. But they threatened during the campaign against the judicial reform that preceded the war. They threatened not to serve in the military in their reserve duties if called up in time of war. And Barak met with them on Zoom and discussed the strategy. At that time, he met with them.
So we have
the strategy.
Barak from before the war, from the era of the reform, and then Barak from now. I just have to mention these are reserve Air Force crews who said they'll stop coming to their
and of course none of them did. None of them did.
But the first thing I'll do, because since it may slip under the radar if you miss something in the subtitles, so I'll just say what the shock was when we first saw this, when this was made public. Barak said he has a friend, a historian, who told him that if the Yarkon, the river that crosses north of Tel Aviv, there would be floating corpses of Jews killed by Jews, then Israel will call Ehud Barak because he is the most proficient. So after the war, people have begun to ask if enough corpse has piled up. And if you think I'm joking, I'm not. Here is Ehud Barak.
רבים אמרו, גם אני, שיכול להיות פה יותר טוב רק אחרי שיהיה פה הרבה יותר רע. האם היום כבר מספיק רע?
יש לי חבר, היסטוריון, שאמר לי פעם, אהוד, לך יקראו כאשר יצופו גופות בירקון. הוא אומר, אבל אני מבקש להדגיש, לא יצופו גופות של שוהים בלתי חוקיים מהשטחים, לא של ערבים ישראלים, יצופו גופות של יהודים שיהודים הרגו. באופן אובייקטיבי אני יותר מתאים ויותר בשל מכל בן אדם אחר במדינה לקחת את ההגה.
מבחינתי, ואני בטוח שמבחינת כל חברי 555,
כל, אל תגיד רוב.
כל, לא צריך שגופות יצופו על הירקון. הגופות שנערמו מ7 באוקטובר ומאז מספיקות. חבל שהוא עדיין בלשכת ראש הממשלה ולא אתה.
מחאה היא לא דבר פשוט, היא גדלה, יש לה דבר אותנטי שצומח מבפנים, לכן צריך טיפה סבלנות, אבל אני בטוח שהיא תתגבר. קודם כל הגרעין הראשון ישנו היום, והגרעין האמיתי של הזעם והתביעה שאי אפשר לעמוד בפניה מבחינה המוסרית אפילו, זה של משפחות הנרצחים ושל הקהילות המפונים, של למעשה הקהילות שבתוכם חיו הנרצחים. זה יבוא כמה ימים מתגבר, זה ייקח זמן. חלק מהסיבה שזה לא בא כרגע, זה שבמידה מסוימת נתניהו הצליח לזרוע את האווירה שכרגע יורים ולא צריך לפעול נגדו בזמן
אסור פוליטיקה.
בזמן שיורים. זה לא בדיוק נכון. אנחנו צריכים להעביר לציבור של לפעול בזמן מלחמה כאשר הדבר הוא אקוטי, זה לא רק חשוב, זה כמעט הכרחי.
אבל רגע, אני רוצה לחדד, אהוד. אני מסכים איתך, ואנחנו, גם תנועות המחאה וגם אנחנו ב-555, אומרים לאנשים והולכים, אני משתתף בדיוק בכל ההפגנות האלה. האם לדעתך, וזאת נקודה חשובה שנמצאת בוויכוח, האם התנועות האלה צריכות היום לצאת לרחובות כאנשים וכאזרחים, או למתג את עצמם כתנועות המחאה?
רק כאזרחים. חשוב להפריד את זה מתנועת המחאה. תנועת המחאה נתפסת בתודעה הציבורית כמו שהוא היה עסוק בהפיכה המשטרית. ואני חושב שרוב הציבור היה איתנו, אבל היו גם כאלה שהסתגרו. אסור לבוא עם הסימני קר של תנועת המחאה, לא עם הדגלים השחורים ולא עם הדגלים של מדינת ישראל. כן, זה תמיד, אבל לא עם דגלים שחורים, לא עם החולצות של אחים לנשק, לא עם כל סממן של המחאה, לא עם הבמה בקפלן ואפילו לא עם הדמויות. לא אני ולא בוגי ולא חלוץ, אבל גם לא רדמן ושיקמה, ברסלר ומישהו מהאנשים אחרים שמובילים. לא צריך לחבר את זה למחאה, זה אותם אנשים, אבל זה אנשים שבאים הפעם מסיבה אחרת לגמרי.
You know, Gadi, this is an amazing clip. And the part I like the best is there at the end when he's saying that in order to be effective, we have to make sure that the new version of the campaign against Netanyahu has different individuals leading it, so people don't connect, the public doesn't connect up between the last iteration of the anti-Netanyahu the protests and this one. I tweeted at the time when that clip first started going around that the only thing that keeps Ehud Barak from being an evil genius is his need to be seen by everyone to be an evil genius. This is where the narcissism comes in. He wants everyone to see that he is the smartest guy in the room. He is actually very, very smart, but he's missing that element of actually truly understanding human beings. He doesn't really get that.
It's been said about him that he's an analytic mind, but he has no heart. And here, for some reason, it didn't have the impact that it usually does in other places, but his continued meeting with Jeffrey Epstein have rendered him even here, though it's not, though he's still the behind the scene leader of the anti-Netanyahu movement, it sort of made him unelectable. So
why hasn't Israel why hasn't the Jeffrey Epstein stuff caught on in Israel?
Oh, that's simple, because the press protects anyone who is a potential threat to Netanyahu. So the press downplayed it. But, you know, he's been seen going out of Jeffrey Epstein mansion with a scarf over his face. So a lot of people have that as their avatar on Twitter and elsewhere. And Ham Tzavar is this the kind of scarf that he had. Is a lot of people call him Ehud Ham Tzavar on social media. So now to another part of the rebellion. I guess it's a continuation of the same subject, Mike, isn't it? The the chiefs of the security service have complained to the cabinet that Netanyahu refuses to discuss the day after the war. Why is it their business to complain about matters of policy?
Well, this is now you can actually see this is what you and I have been talking about in the abstract about how the movement against Netanyahu intersects with the American policy. But now we can actually see it happening in front of our eyes because the Americans are coming to all of their through the different bureaucracies. So American intelligence officials are going to Israeli intelligence officials. American defense officials are going to Israeli defense officials and saying, "What about the day after? What about the day after? What about the day after?" Those people in the Israeli defense establishment don't have an answer, and then they have to turn to the political leadership, Netanyahu, and say, "We need an answer. The Americans are knocking on our doors, demanding an answer." Now, I don't know who those Israeli defense establishment people are. They may just be acting as good bureaucrats, but they may also share some of the interests of the Americans in toppling Netanyahu. How does this topple Netanyahu? The minute Netanyahu says the day after includes the Palestinian Authority, he has a crisis in his coalition, particularly with Smotrich and Ben Gvir, the characters that the Americans... Religious Zionists, whom the Americans love to hate the most, and that will crack up the coalition. So that's how the security questions, the negotiations with the Americans, and the coalition issues all come together into one at the same time.
So let me add an Israeli aspect to it. Part of the protest against the reform degenerated into a threat of a military coup, where army chiefs were at least not being very clear if there is a constitutional crisis, if they'll still obey the government. And what happened is they started compartmentalizing stuff and not passing it on to the to elected officials, so that the army was running stuff on its own. Why is this connected to the war and the crisis and then the alliance with those in America who want to topple Netanyahu? Because on October 6th, there was an assessment of the situation late at night by the chiefs of Israeli security forces and some of the high-ranking officers of the IDF in the relevant sector, and they did not inform the Prime Minister's office nor the Minister of Defense. We know this for sure. Yes,
I was gonna, yeah. I know that I've seen this. I've seen this claim that Netanyahu didn't get a call until 6:30 in the morning on the 7th.
6:29. Exactly.
6:29.
Yeah, that's
how do we know this though? Where has it been definitively established?
It was published here in the press. Since it's such a precise number, I'm sure this is the record from the Prime Minister's office, because the connection to the army is through Hamazkir HaTzva'i, his army secretary, and so we know exactly when the army secretary reported it, and this has not been challenged since. And this is a very, very strange thing. Because in that nightly conversations, they weighed the possibility of a Hamas attack large enough to occupy two settlements, two centers of population. When you say settlements, you usually mean the West Bank, but we mean here a village or a kibbutz
towns,
adjacent to the border. And so if this is a scale we've never seen before, and if there was such a danger, the question is, why didn't they raise hell? And especially, why didn't they wake up the Minister of Defense and the Prime Minister? So we'll probably be hearing a lot about that, because the Israeli press is now, since it is a political party, it's now trumpeting, blaming Netanyahu for everything. But at one point or another, we'll have to discover why the IDF itself did not raise the alarm when the information was already there. Mike, are you ready for the dumbest take on the news?
I'm ready. I'm absolutely ready. Are we going to start with me, or are we going to start with you?
Let's start with you.
Okay. Let me just pull it up here. My dumbest take on the news is the last column written by Tom Friedman, the New York Times columnist, called "It's Time for the U.S. to Give Israel Some Tough Love." And you can guess what he wants to do. He wants to get tough on Netanyahu. And he writes, "It's time for the U.S. to tell Israel how to declare victory in Gaza and go home." And how do we do that, Gadi? Do you know how to have victory in Gaza and go home? The United States puts a deal on the table to Hamas that if Hamas will release all of the hostages, then Israel will pull out lock, stock, and barrel of Gaza. But he makes clear Israel will not release any security detainees of Hamas that it has. So he's certain that Sinwar will take this deal. Why will Sinwar take this deal? Do you have any idea?
No, I don't.
You know, you're not reading your Tom Friedman, because the latest Palestinian opinion polls show, and I'm not kidding you here. I'm not kidding you. Let me find the right line. I can't find it here. I'll just tell you. The Halil Shikaki, who runs a Palestinian opinion poll, he shows you that since October 7th, yes, it's true that Hamas has gone up in support on the West Bank, but its numbers have not improved in Gaza. It's not. It's not that they've gone down. It's that they have not improved, right?
Well, you know, Thomas Friedman is considered a joke over here.
I just the number of different assumptions in here that are cockamamie. It's just the idea that this is a deal that Sinwar, that there's an actual deal to be had here, and if the Americans come forward, Sinwar will just take it. The idea that public opinion in Gaza has any impact on how Sinwar makes decisions. This should be obvious. This is an organization, Hamas, that created this unbelievable network of underground tunnels and didn't build a single bomb shelter, but then made all of these civilians, human shields. This is just crazy. It's just crazy. And I just think that major American columnists should be a little bit more tethered to reality instead of their political fantasies. And what he's doing here, I don't know whether, I don't want to presume to know his method of operation, but he is effectively just serving as a mouthpiece for the Biden administration for its anti-Netanyahu campaign.
And also the idea that Israel would agree to just pull out of Gaza just because the hostages are back is preposterous. The whole western Negev has been emptied of population, and this population will not return until this Nazi monster on our border is removed. So there's no chance for any government in Israel that would go for such a deal where the public opinion actually matters would just be ousted from office on the spot. So the stupidest take on the news that I found in Israel belongs to Dan Chalutz. Now, Dan Chalutz is a comrade of Ehud Barak in the fight against Netanyahu, and he was also the chief of staff when we disengaged from Gaza. So he was interviewed by this same guy that you saw from 555, along with Ehud Olmert, another former prime minister, Netanyahu enemy, and Guy Poran, the interviewer, asked them. He said the Bibi poison machine is saying that the reason for the October 7 attack was the disengagement for Gaza. And what does Dan Chalutz have to say? And we don't have it translated for you, but I'll tell you what he said. He said there was only one mistake. And that mistake was that a boy was born in Jerusalem 74 years ago. That and nothing else. This guy,
meaning Netanyahu.
Netanyahu was born. So
that's
the mistake that Israel made was that Ben Zion and Tzila Netanyahu, the parents of Benjamin, Jonathan, and Ido Netanyahu, conceived Netanyahu, was the strategic mistake that Israel had, and these people don't feel ridiculous saying this.
Gadi, I want to give you I'm going to give you some advice that you can bank on when it comes to public figures. Always beware a man in search of redemption. Chalutz is responsible for the Second Lebanon War, for the failure of the Second Lebanon War, because he was chief of staff then, and he believed that you could win this war against Hezbollah purely from the air.
He's a
and that
pilot.
you didn't have to go in on the ground. And the war is generally recognized as being a failure. And it was a big, there was a big controversy about it afterwards. And of course, commission of inquiry, and so on and so forth. But since then, he's a man looking for redemption. And what do they always do over here in the United States? You know, if you're in search of redemption, if you're a celebrity in Hollywood and you're in search of redemption, you go on the Oprah Winfrey show and you confess your sins. If you're someone in the policy world and you do something stupid, and you want to confess your sins, you go to the Council on Foreign Relations and start mouthing all of the establishment formulations of the center left, right? To show that you are one of the good people against the evil, nasty right-wing idiots. You know, and that's what Halutz is doing. He's aligning himself with all the beautiful people and saying all the problems in the country belong to Netanyahu, not me. I'm one of the good guys.
Yeah, let's see if people buy this, because this is becoming ridiculous to an unprecedented degree. That's
don't
all
trust.
from,
Sorry, don't trust.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you more advice. More advice.
yeah,
Don't,
advice
this is
from
news.
Saint Mike.
News you can use. Don't trust men in search of redemption, and never trust an ex-nun. Okay.
Also, trust Israel Update, because we're giving you the real news. And,
Absolutely.
and that's all from us for today. Thank you for watching.